Before GPS, before air conditioning, before computerized controls, men built entire civilizations with machines that ran purely on iron fire and brute stubbornness. Some of these dozers weighed more than a modern warship section. Some ran on fuels you'd never imagine. One was so massive it had to be shipped in pieces and assembled on site like a mechanical dinosaur. These 10 machines didn't just move dirt, they moved history. Let's count them down. Number 1. Caterpillar D9. Let's kick things off with a machine that didn't just build roads, it survived wars. The Caterpillar D9 was introduced in 1955, and from the moment it rolled off the assembly line in Peoria, Illinois, it was clear this wasn't your average construction machine. Weighing in at approximately 49 tons in its base configuration, the D9 was powered by a Caterpillar D353 diesel engine, producing around 385 horsepower, a staggering number for the mid-1950s. But what made the D9 legendary wasn't just its power, it was its adaptability. The Israeli Defense Forces famously armored their D9s, creating what soldiers called the doobie, essentially turning a construction machine into a combat engineering vehicle that could operate under direct fire. These armored D9s were used extensively from the 1970s onward, and photos of these machines are genuinely shocking. They look like something out of a post-apocalyptic science fiction film. Domestically, the D9 was the backbone of massive American infrastructure projects during the 1950s and 60s. It pushed through forests in the Pacific Northwest, graded highways across the American Southwest, and cleared land for developments that defined post-war suburban America. A single D9 could move over 1,000 cubic yards of material per hour under the right conditions. That's the equivalent of filling roughly 100 dump trucks every 60 minutes. The D9 is still in production today in its modern D9T form, making it one of the longest-running dozer models in history. But nothing compares to seeing those original 1950s machines in raw, unfiltered iron glory. Number 2. LeTourneau Tournadozer. Now, most people think of bulldozers as purely mechanical machines, pistons, gears, hydraulic fluid. But in the 1940s and 50s, R.G. LeTourneau was building dozers powered by electric wheel motors. Yes, you heard that right. Electric drive. Decades before Tesla made it fashionable, Robert Gilmore LeTourneau was one of the most prolific inventors in construction equipment history, holding over 300 patents during his lifetime. His Tournadozer line used a diesel engine not to directly drive the tracks but to power electric generators that then sent electricity to individual traction motors at each drive wheel or track. This gave operators incredible torque control that purely mechanical systems simply couldn't match. The LeTourneau Tournadozer Model A was introduced in the late 1940s and could produce over 500 horsepower through its diesel-electric system. These machines were used in massive land-clearing operations, particularly in Texas and the American South, where LeTourneau's company cleared thousands of acres for agricultural development, using a technique called tree dozing, pushing down entire forests with a single blade pass. LeTourneau's machines were so effective that the U.S. military contracted him during World War II to build portable airstrip equipment. He literally helped win the Pacific War by enabling rapid construction of runways on Pacific islands. The man was building electric drive construction equipment while most of the world was still figuring out basic hydraulics, and that is genuinely crazy when you think about it. Number 3. Komatsu D575A. If you want to talk about sheer, overwhelming size, nothing in production dozer history touches the Komatsu D575A Super Dozer. Introduced in 1991, the D575A holds the Guinness World Record as the world's largest production bulldozer. Let those numbers sink in. It weighs approximately 152 metric tons. That's 335,000 pounds of machine. Its engine, a Komatsu SA12V170 diesel, produces 1,150 horsepower. The blade alone, called the semi-U blade, is 7.4 meters wide and 3.29 meters tall. That blade can push over 90 cubic meters of material in a single pass. Now, technically, the D575A is modern, but its design philosophy is rooted in old-school thinking. More steel, more engine, more blade. There's no fancy automation, no semi-autonomous controls. You sit in that cab, You put your hands on those levers, and you command 152 tons of Japanese engineering. The D575A was primarily designed for large-scale coal mining and quarrying operations in Australia, Canada, and the American coal belt. A single machine costs between $3 million and $5 million. Operating it costs thousands of dollars per hour in fuel alone. It drinks approximately 130 liters of diesel per hour at full load. Seeing this machine next to a standard bulldozer is one of those genuinely perspective-shattering moments. A full-grown adult standing next to the D575A blade barely reaches halfway up. These machines exist in a category that most people don't even know is possible. Number 4. Caterpillar D8. While the D9 gets most of the glory, the Caterpillar D8 has arguably the most impressive construction resume of any bulldozer ever made. First introduced in 1935, the D8 has been in continuous production for nearly 90 years, making it the longest-running bulldozer model in history. The original 1935 D8 produced around 95 horsepower from its diesel engine. By the time the iconic D8H model arrived in the 1950s, that had climbed to 270 horsepower, a near tripling of output over 2 decades of engineering refinement. But here's what makes the D8 genuinely historic. It built Hoover Dam's access infrastructure. It graded the roads and cut the terrain that allowed one of the greatest engineering projects in American history to proceed. D8s also played critical roles in constructing the Alaska Highway. 1,387 miles of road pushed through some of the most brutal terrain on Earth. Built in just 8 months and 12 days during 1942 and 1943 under wartime urgency. Army engineers and civilian contractors used D8s to cut through permafrost, mountain passes, swamps, and boreal forest in conditions that regularly dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Men worked those machines in shifts around the clock, often by headlight, in temperatures that froze diesel fuel in the lines. The Alaska Highway remains one of the greatest construction achievements in North American history, and the D8 was at the center of it. The D8 is still sold today. Think about that. A machine designed in 1935 is still considered relevant, useful, and competitive in the modern construction market. That is old-school engineering at its absolute finest. Number 5. Allis-Chalmers HD41. Here's one that most people, even hardcore equipment enthusiasts, have never heard of, and that's a genuine crime against construction history. The Allis-Chalmers HD41 was introduced in 1965 and was, at the time of its introduction, the largest and most powerful crawler tractor ever built by an American manufacturer. It weighed approximately 105 tons and was powered by a turbocharged diesel engine, producing around 524 horsepower, enormous numbers for the mid-1960s. Allis-Chalmers was a Milwaukee-based company that had been manufacturing agricultural and construction equipment since the late 1800s. By the 1960s, they were in serious competition with Caterpillar for the heavy end of the dozer market, and the HD41 was their answer. A machine so massive it required special transportation arrangements to move between job sites. The HD41 was used extensively in open-pit mining operations, large dam construction projects, and major highway development across the American West. These machines were tough as iron boots. Operators who worked them described the experience as physically demanding in a way that modern equipment simply isn't. No power steering, minimal cab comfort, pure mechanical feedback through the levers. Allis-Chalmers eventually exited the construction equipment market in 1985 when their equipment division was sold to Fiat. The HD41 went out of production, and today's surviving examples are extraordinarily rare. If you find one sitting in a field somewhere, you've found a genuine piece of forgotten American industrial history. Number 6. International Harvester TD25. International Harvester is a name most people associate with farm tractors and pickup trucks. But between the 1940s and 1980s, IH was building some of the most capable heavy crawler tractors on the American market. The TD25, introduced in the late 1950s and refined through the 1960s, was IH's flagship crawler dozer, a machine producing around 270 horsepower from its IH-DT817 diesel engine and weighing approximately 40 tons in working configuration. These were serious machines used in serious applications: coal stripping operations in Kentucky and West Virginia, pipeline right-of-way clearing across the Great Plains, and irrigation project construction throughout the American West. What made the TD25 particularly interesting was International Harvester's dealer network. Because IH was already in nearly every agricultural community in America through its farm equipment dealers, getting parts and service for a TD25 in a remote location was dramatically easier than getting support for competing brands. This practical logistical advantage made IH crawlers genuinely popular in regions that Caterpillar's service network couldn't efficiently reach. I sold its construction equipment division to Dresser Industries in 1982, and the brand eventually became Komatsu Dresser, before being absorbed into Komatsu America. The TD25's legacy lives on in the Komatsu D150 line, but old-school TD25s still occasionally surface at equipment auctions, and they are living proof that old iron, properly maintained, simply does not quit. Number 7. Fiat-Allis 41B. After Fiat acquired Allis-Chalmers Construction Equipment Division in 1985, they continued developing the heavy dozer line under the Fiat-Allis brand, producing one of the most underrated machines in construction history, the Fiat-Allis 41B, built on the bones of the original Allis-Chalmers HD41. The 41B was refined and updated with improved hydraulic systems and a more reliable powertrain, producing approximately 535 horsepower. These machines worked primarily in large-scale mining operations, and they were genuinely respected by operators for their reliability and raw pushing power. What makes the 41B particularly fascinating from a historical standpoint is its lineage. This machine connects directly to American manufacturing roots, Milwaukee engineering combined with Italian industrial design philosophy, creating something that was distinctly its own thing. The Fiat-Allis era represents a fascinating crossroads moment in construction equipment history, when American manufacturing capacity and European engineering sensibility were being forced together by economic pressures. Today, that lineage has evolved into CNH industrial and case construction equipment. But the 41B sits at a specific historical moment that is worth understanding and appreciating. A machine that was both the end of one era and the beginning of another. Number 8. Dresser TD40. Following International Harvester's exit from construction equipment, Dresser Industries continued developing the heavy crawler line, producing the TD40, a machine specifically engineered for the brutal demands of surface coal mining. The TD40 produced approximately 524 horsepower and was designed to work in the coal stripping operations of Appalachia and the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, two of the most demanding dozer environments on Earth. Surface coal mining requires machines to push massive overburden, the rock and soil sitting above coal seams, sometimes moving material that has never been disturbed since prehistoric geological processes deposited it millions of years ago. Operating a TD40 in a Kentucky strip mine in the 1970s and 80s was not a comfortable job. These cabs were loud, vibration was constant, and the terrain these machines worked on was artificially created. Unstable, unpredictable, and constantly changing as material was pushed and piled. Operators developed an almost sixth sense for machine behavior, learning to read subtle vibrations and sounds that indicated potential problems before instruments could detect them. The TD40's legacy is largely confined to coal country, oral history now. Old operators who worked these machines talk about them with a reverence that modern equipment doesn't seem to inspire in the same way. There was something about old iron that created a relationship between man and machine that has genuinely been lost in the age of computer-controlled, climate-controlled, semi-autonomous equipment. Number 9. Caterpillar D9G with elevated sprocket. By the late 1970s, Caterpillar engineers were wrestling with a fundamental problem in dozer design. The traditional low-mounted sprocket configuration caused excessive track wear and limited the machine's ability to work in severe terrain. Their solution was radical: move the drive sprocket up. The elevated sprocket design, first introduced on the D9L in 1977, completely changed the geometry of how a crawler tractor's undercarriage interacted with the ground. By elevating the sprocket, engineers isolated the final drive and sprocket from ground-level shock loads, dramatically reducing wear on the most expensive components of the undercarriage system. The result was revolutionary. Track life on elevated sprocket machines significantly exceeded that of conventional designs in comparable working conditions. The machine's ground contact was improved, giving operators better control on slopes and in loose material. The elevated sprocket also allowed for a longer track contact length relative to the machine's overall size. This design has since become the industry standard across Caterpillar's entire crawler line. Every modern cat dozer you see, from the D3 to the D11, uses this elevated sprocket architecture. But it started with old-school engineers solving a real problem with genuine creative thinking. And the D9 LD9G generation represents that pivotal moment when decades of conventional thinking was thrown out in favor of something genuinely better. Number 10. Caterpillar D11. We close with the machine that represents the ultimate evolution of everything we've talked about, the Caterpillar D11. First introduced as the D11N in 1986, the D11 was developed to replace the legendary D10 and represented the most powerful production dozer Caterpillar had ever built. Its Cat 3508B diesel engine produces 850 horsepower. Operating weight is approximately 104 tons. The standard blade, the semi-U configuration, moves over 43 cubic yards of material per pass. But the D11's most impressive feature isn't any single specification. It's the accumulation of everything learned from 6 decades of dozer engineering, from the early D80s that graded Alaska Highway, through the elevated sprocket revolution of the 1970s, through continuous refinement of powertrain, hydraulics, and operator environment, all synthesized into one machine. D11s work today in the largest mining operations on Earth, the oil sands of Alberta, the iron ore mines of the Pilbara region in Western Australia, the copper mines of Chile. These machines run 24 hours a day in conditions that would destroy lesser equipment within weeks. A D11 operating in a Canadian oil sands mine might push material in temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius in winter, then work through +35 degrees Celsius summer heat, a temperature swing of 75 degrees Celsius that the machine handles without complaint. The D11 is the direct descendant of every machine on this list. Every lesson learned from the D8 in Alaska, from LeTourneau's electric drive experiments, from Allis-Chalmers' heavy dozer program, from IH's practical serviceability philosophy, all of it lives in the engineering DNA of the D11. That's what makes old-school dozers so compelling. They didn't just move dirt, they taught us everything we know about moving dirt. These 10 machines represent the best of an era when engineering was done with slide rules, physical intuition, and the hard-won knowledge of operators who lived and breathed this equipment every day. They were built to last, maintained by craftsmen who could diagnose a problem by sound alone, and operated by men who developed genuine relationships with their machines. The next time you drive past a construction site, take a second look at what's moving earth in that pit. Because everything you're seeing traces its lineage directly back to the iron giants we just counted down. Old-school dozers didn't just build America, they built the entire modern world.